So the setup of what I use to develop this project. I use, as you already see, Google Drive. I use ChatGPT. I have also Codex. I have also Cursor, by the way, which I prefer to use usually, but I don't want it. By the way, battery is dead. One moment. Charging. Yeah, I prefer to use Codex just because I have a lot of limits, unlike a Cursor limits that I will probably need. So first I'll use Codex. If I'll reach the limits of the Codex, I will switch to the Cursor. Doesn't really matter, actually. As soon as it's AI development, not vibe coding. What else I have? I will implement Android native with Jetpack Compose, Android native application with Kotlin and Jetpack Compose and all the fancy and new technologies. I will try. Yeah, I will have Android Studio Panda version. Oh, and that's basically it. That's all I have to use to develop this project. Yeah, this is a very short video, so let's go to the first stage. To the first stage of development. And what I did first with coding agent. So I've made a setup. I created this project in my codex, which has an access to this battery alarm application. And yeah, I have already added Git, initialized Git. I connected it to the remote repository, and you can see. Will I do the project public? I guess so. Okay, if I decide to make the project public, you will see in the description the link to the project, to the code base. So I link with the GitHub. This was my first stage, my first commit. Basically, I set agent, set up two modules, application and domain. Add dependency injection framework like Hilt, add main business logic and abstraction interfaces so I can understand in an abstract level how the code base will look like. It also automatically generated for me unit tests, even though I didn't ask for it, but it's good. Why not? I will review it later, but basically I would do something like that with any other project. So the first step would be decide what modules you will have for your application, what dependencies you need for each model, and tell agent to create this basic application. And I gave Codex this document with MVP, with architecture described by text, and it generated for me this code, and we'll together review it. Now I want to review and get familiar with the code very same way as I would do with any other project if I, let's say, join other team. And it might be useful for you. How would you get familiar with the code base? I wouldn't recommend you to jump to the implementation of a class. I would recommend you to see first what modules you have. What modules did you Codex generated for me? Application and domain. Will it be enough for me? Yes. For this system design I created for these components we'll be using, it's quite enough. It's very minimal separation by at least two modules. For domain layer, and for application. This way, I like at least to have these two modules, even for such minimal project as this one, just because it creates limits for me as a developer and for AI agent. Limits that, for example, domain should not know about any Android dependency. Have a look. See, domain, build Gradle, what it knows about? Only about how to create unit tests and basically Kotlin dependencies. That's it. Application has bunch of different dependencies. All Android dependencies, context, activity, Jetpack Compose, Espresso, I will need for end-to-end tests. And also it will know about domain layer. But basically, this is a minimum precautions, is that the correct word? A minimum, at minimum, it will create some it will make less possible to make architecture problems, mistakes while developing. Yeah, so that's what modules I will have. I believe we'll not need any other modules. Only if we'll need it, we'll really create some big features later. Probably we'll switch to have different, like having core modules and different features. But for now, for MVP, it's not enough. It's not required. We'll need only these two modules. I decided to use Hilt as dependency injection framework. Coin you may use, it doesn't really matter. And first, what I have a look on modules and what modules know about. I will have a look on the build Gradle dependencies. Then I would go to see on dependency. So basically, I go from the abstraction level from the most abstract levels to the least abstract layers. Then I go to dependency injection. I will go and observe first, get familiar with the first line of code. And I would start from manifest, or in that case, dependency injection module, DI, alarm module. I want to see how well Codex constructed injected dependencies for me, whether it's a clean architecture or not. So I will have a look. We have a module, basically we have one module that will provide for us alarm setting repository. What it will do, we have abstract out in the interface, like we defined basic functionality. We have is alarm enabled, okay, and set alarm enabled. Yeah, we need to do, we require something like that when user click enable listening to the alarm level, because we have to store somewhere the information that it's already done. We'll need this repository. We'll need alarm. Later you will understand more the code base. I will just want go with you through the modules. Through the module of dependency injection, not the module of Android project, because these are two different concepts. Also, alarm module provides for us okay, working the way we will need to do the job. We control the sound, because our alarm will need stop sound, repeating sound, and stop it. Okay, quite straightforward and simple interface. Also, we'll need the vibration, correct? That's why we have a vibrator in here. Why not? We'll need alarm notifier. What is it? Show alarm started and clear alarm. Why do we need it? Why do we need something like that? Okay, we'll see. Now we'll dive into main class controller that will tie all these components together. Alarm controller. It will have a alarm state, start alarm and stop alarm. As a parameter, the reason why we start alarm, because battery is low, basically main requirement. And also I decided to have in the first version test alarm flow, because I believe for the user it will be important in the main screen to be able to check whether he set up correct alarm. For example, if you have a simple alarm, you set it for morning, you have a test button to see what sound, whether you have a sound and vibration when the battery is low. So I want to have this button on the main screen. When user click on the button, then test alarm, then user will hear and see very same thing. Then he or she will be wake up with at night when the battery level will be low. Okay, so we have two reasons to start alarm: when battery is low and when user clicks the button. Good point to have this enum. What else we have? We have stop alarm and the reason why we stop. And we already see from the system design, we have two reasons. Again, if users click stop button, we should stop alarm. And when user plug a phone to the cable to the phone, or phone to the cable, correct me in the comments what is the correct way. So we have two reasons, and we represent this reason by this model: power connected or user dismissed by button. Okay, I approve this approach. And as a controller start alarm, we'll have this sealed class, whether it started or already active, okay, or disabled. Fine, I think it's fine. We'll see later if we actually need it. And when the user stop, he will the one who calls this function will have the information whether it's actually stopped or already stopped. Makes sense. Good. So I basically approve. I have now a good picture of an architecture that was generated by the agent. Now I want to see the default alarm controller and validate the logic, at least briefly. But let's do it in a separate video because this video is quite long already. Okay, so in this video, my main point of the video was just go through with you what our very first step I do when I set up the project, and when I get familiar with the project, whether it's a new project I join as joining another team, or whether this is a new code base that was generated by your agent and you want to get familiar with it, because it's important to get familiar if you're not a vibe coder. Fine. And yeah, to summarize, do I need to summarize? Maybe that's a good point, because it's partially like mentoring video for the new beginners in Android development. So to summarize, I go through. First, I set up the project, set up modules, set up Git, connect with a repository, connect the code base with coding agent. whether this is Cursor, Claude, Codex in my case, or whatever else or you use. Whatever else you use. Then I give very limited request to AI to generate modules, to add a Git, to initialize Git, to connect with a remote repository, to get a Git, to add a Git ignore, and to make first commit and to put it to the remote, which I have already done, as you can see with an agent. And I even did something more. Which is not very correct way. It would be better to have it in a separate request to the AI agent, but I told him to generate domain layer interface and dependencies, and to inject these dependencies through the dependency injection framework like Hilt, which is I'm using in this project. And all of that gives me gives me like high-level architecture view to the project, because previously I had the system design view, very abstract level of thinking about the project, where when I'm thinking about the risk, what I need, whether it's even possible to do, whether it does make sense to do this project or not, thinking about the functional requirements, etc. Now I have an idea how the architecture of the project looks, whether it is more or less a clean architecture, whether single responsibility principle was satisfied, whether we rely on the abstractions and not on the specifics or implementations of these classes, whether it will be possible to unit test everything like that, and whether this project even builds and compiles. Fine. We made one step down to the code, but we will not coding yet. We'll just have an idea of an architecture. And later, in the next video, we'll start thinking and reviewing, making code review of AI. By the way, project compiled and built. Fine. Let's stop this long video.